Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because, wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fresh Take from What Fresh Hell Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy. And today we're talking to Claire Lerner. She's a child development specialist and practicing clinician with more than 30 years of experience working with children and families in a range of capacities. Her new book is Why is My Child in Charge? A roadmap to end power struggles, increase cooperation, and find joy in parenting young children. Welcome, Claire.
Thanks for having me.
This book makes a rather shocking statement at the beginning, and I just want to lay that out there. This is a shocker, guys. Young children are not actually out to drive us insane.
You went in hard with that statement.
Yeah, you're speaking to sort of really the foundation of the book, which is that in my practice with families, as I start to unravel these very messy, challenging scenarios they get into with their kids, that at the heart of it, there are these kind of faulty mindsets that they're filtering their experiences and reactions through. And one of them is this sort of knee-jerk reaction that their child is misbehaving and working their last nerve on purpose.
So what are they doing? They're not driving us nuts on purpose?
Well, the unfortunate fact for parents is that there's so much brain science out now, right, that helps us understand that the frontal cortex, the front part of our brains that allows us to have impulse control and think about our feelings and plan our reactions, is really in the most rudimentary phases of development in the early years. And so almost always their impulses, their needs, their desires are going to override what they may be able to tell you they know. And I think that's one of the really confusing things, especially when you've got a really verbal, clever 2.5 or 3-year-old who can tell you, you say, oh, do we hit people? Oh, no, we don't hit people. Do we throw food in the car? Oh, no, we don't throw food in the car. But there's a robust body of research that shows in the heat of the moment, they are going to be driven by what we think of as their downstairs brain. And so a lot of what you're seeing is sort of, I think of as closing this expectation gap, that if you have higher expectations for your child than they're actually capable of, that delta right there is just a recipe for total frustration and annoyance. So once parents understand that their child isn't working their last nerve on purpose and that children are also driven to get what they want, and it's up to us as parents to set those limits, then they are much better positioned to respond not harshly, not angrily, which only usually increases the power struggle, but to set those limits lovingly, which at the end of the day, that's really what I think my work boils down to, is helping parents see that the dream could be true. Like, you can be a really good limit setter while staying connected and loving with your child.
This is something that we explore a lot. And a lot of the people who come to our Facebook group bring this problem, which is
my kid is running the house, my kid is out of control, and I am spending my whole day yelling at them. I'm using my own, I love the phrase, downstairs brain, because it's kind of then triggering our downstairs brain, right? Like we're in our worst mode. And then I think a lot of the feedback that we hear sometimes in our Facebook community, definitely from the world, is you're not strict enough. You're not yelling enough. You're not, in charge. And the way to get in charge is to come in hotter than the kid. And you're saying that's not the correct approach.
Right, because, when you come in, with that sort of threatening approach, you're just getting your kids' haunches up and they're picking up as much on your tone as what you're saying. So, therein lies some other critical mind shifts that, again, like I said, form the foundation of the book. What I'm doing in the book is I'm elucidating these faulty mindsets and then showing parents how making important mind shifts enables them to do exactly what you're talking about, which is to be a loving limit setter. Because I can't tell you how many times a parent has walked into my office and said one of the following: there's a fascist dictator living in my home.
I used to have a blog called Short Fat Dictator. That was the name of my blog.
Well, I'm sure it resonated with many. Here are some of my favorites. My son at 3 is the CEO of our family.
Right.
My child is extorting me. He'll only come to the dinner table if I let him watch Paw Patrol on his iPad.
Yeah.
And to moms who have a 4-year-old, really feisty, amazing kid, but, very, very persistent. And they've, things have flipped. They've lost control. And what they described was that, we have this lovely little girl. We want her to have agency and efficacy and for her to know her power, all amazing things. But at the point that they came to see me, they said, think she's an equity partner. By the way, they were attorneys, so that's, their vernacular.
It's their frame of reference.
So where things have gotten flipped is that most of the time, what's happening in these scenarios, and let me say that a major part of my work is doing home visits. And that's really where a lot of these insights came from, was that parents would come to me, we would problem solve an issue, talk about new strategies, and then when push came to shove in the heat of the moment in their home, everything fell apart. So I started to do home visits in order to really watch how these scenarios unfolded and then would process it with the parents at a later date without the child to talk, as you say, Margaret, about what's getting triggered for them. A lot of the time it's that their child is making them feel out of control because they won't wash their hands before dinner. They won't stay in their room at bedtime. They won't come to sit at the dinner table. And what they're doing is they're focusing on trying to get their child to change their behavior, which is what puts the child in charge. So they're bribing, they're cajoling, they're threatening, they're offering rewards in hope against hope that one of those tactics is going to get the child to say, you know what, Dad, it really is important for my mind and my body to get the rest it needs right now. So let's end with the books and the cuddle time, and you should leave so I could get myself to sleep. Like, that almost never happens. So if you are bribing, let's say, and your child doesn't accept the bribe and they're like, oh, I don't care about another half an hour of TV tomorrow, so I'm still going to run around the house till 11 o'clock at night, they hold all the cards because your strategy is dependent on them getting with the program. So one major mind shift we're working on that changes lives for families and enables them to limit set with love is to come up with a plan where they have an end game. So it's not nagging, cajoling, hating on your child for not getting in the car seat in time for everybody to get to work and school on time. It looks like this. Here's the deal, bud. Totally get it. You're not interested in getting in the car seat. I don't blame you. I'm not asking you to like the rule, but it's my job to help us get to school and work on time. So you have two great choices. You can get into the car seat on your own and be totally in charge. You can hop like a bunny. You can run like Roadrunner, or I'll be a helper and I'll help you get into the car seat. You may not like that. It may feel uncomfortable to both of us if I have to pick you up, but those are your two great options. So you see, in that scenario, the parent never has to get angry or frustrated because they have an end game. And so they can stay calm and loving and move on in a positive way with their child.
Can I push back on that though? Because I know somebody's listening like, yeah, and then my kid would be like, I'm not going to, right? I don't want to do it at all, and runs back into the house. So then what? I think going into this, like I can understand, like don't yell, don't hit, be your best self. But the bribing and cajoling, I think you argue in the book, like those are also damaging to your long-term relationship with your child, even though they get you out of trouble in the short term. So I guess my first question is, how do you see bribing and cajoling as also being damaging in the long term?
Because what you're doing is you're setting it up as if this is like a barter bargaining system. So then kids understandably start to do things like, what are you going to give me to do that? You know, that's where sort of that feeling of extortion comes from. And, you know, I'm sure you both are very aware from reading a lot of literature on parenting that the goal is really for children to choose to cooperate for an internal sense, right, of efficacy and that it leads to positive things as opposed to expecting a reward for every task that they take on or cooperate with. So it also puts parents in a position, Amy, of trying to convince their child to agree with the limit. And that's really where things go south because the parent loses control when they're waiting for their child to ultimately agree with the plan. And what if, like you say, Amy, they choose not to? You know, you say, if you don't get in the car seat right now, or alternatively, if you get in the car seat, I will give you an extra treat. And they're like, I don't care about the treat. And they keep running around. So that gets to your second question, which in that moment, when you've given them the two great choices, you just move on. You don't take the bait. You don't start getting into a negotiation or a shouting match. You simply say, oh, it looks like you need a helper. You pick them up. It may be at arm's length. They may be kicking and screaming. They may be saying things like, and these are all true stories, I'm going to reach my fist into your throat and pull out your voice box and throw it away, or you're a toilet head, or all sorts of insane things kids say when they're triggered. You ignore all of that. You remind yourself, remember, of the first mind shift. He's not doing this on purpose. He doesn't mean what he says. He's triggered. He's uncomfortable right now with the transition, but I'm not hurting him by helping him make this transition. The power struggle is what's hurtful to him in our relationship. So this is sort of what you're now saying to yourself to calm yourself, reminding yourself, right, of what's really going on here. And you pick him up and you strap him in, you ignore all of his vitriol, and you kill him with kindness.
It seems to me then that the choices are not just for your kids. The two choices are also for you. The only two things that are going to happen in here are you're going to get in the car seat or I'm going to help you.
So you're hitting on another key foundational guiding principle, which is that if you don't have a clear boundary in mind, that is, again, a recipe for disaster. So really the limits are as important for the parents to keep them focused on what's our larger goal here and how am I going to scaffold this situation in front of me to avoid the power struggle, to have an end game, because when I can stay calm and loving because I'm in charge, remember, not in a fascist dictator mode. That's another one of those things that parents get really caught on. They feel like if they're actually giving their child a direction, that somehow they're being authoritarian. Kids want clear direction. That's why I would say like 80% of my families, the parents report that the child's a superstar at school, right? The teacher's like, oh, he's so cooperative and he's the first one to help everyone and he accepts when he can't have what he wants. And at home, you know, he's a total terror. Part of it is because schools, in order to run a group effectively, it's like a military operation.
Yep.
In the most positive way, that the kids know exactly what to expect and it's calming. And that's really what the two great choices. That's where the two great choices come in. It's not, if you don't wash your hands now, there's no dinner for you. Well, no parent really intends on depriving their child of food. The child knows it. They're now heady with power, and the power struggle takes on a life of its own. In this model, this is what it looks like. Margaret, washing hands, it's a have to. It's just a have to. Totally get that you don't like it. You don't want to do it. I'm not going to try and convince you to like my rule. You've got two great choices. You can find a sink. You can do it yourself. I can help you. That's one great option. The other option is I take a wet wipe. I hold you. I get your hands clean. Those are your two great options. And then this is my new thing. I say to the child, this is such a big decision. I'm going to give you 30 whole seconds to think about what is the best decision for Margaret. You really focus on they do have choices and control, but not of the outer limit. It's not a choice whether you're going to wash your hands or you're going to stay in your room at bedtime or you're going to get into a car seat. The choice is how it happens.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And I am going to wash my hands. We're going to take a break and we're going to come back and talk about the 8 faulty mindsets of parenting.
For some of us, tax season is one of the only times that we look at our finances fully. And once it's over, well, that was terrible. And it is completely understandable not to want to think about it for another whole year. But using Monarch and being intentional with your finances in an ongoing way helps you see where your money is going and how you can put your refund to best use.
We are here to tell you, simplify your finances with Monarch. Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make your life easier. It brings your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or laptop.
Feel aware and in control of your finances this tax season and get 50% off your Monarch subscription with code FRESH.
As you know, my husband and I are preparing to send, 3 kids off to college, and I cannot tell you how helpful Monarch has been in showing us our full financial picture, helping us to track our spending and reach important savings milestones. Our weekly meeting, Amy, it's now run by Monarch.
Love it. Achieve your financial goals for good with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes money management simple.
Use code FRESH at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off at monarch.com, code FRESH.
At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today and let us surprise you.
Okay, we're back. In the book, you lay out 8 faulty mindsets of parenting. Can you walk us through those and how we're going to shift those mind shifts?
Right. So the good news is that we've actually covered a lot of them. So hopefully as I go through them.
We're already experts, so we'll just have to put a pin in some of them.
Right, exactly. You could write the book.
It's like having a to-do list of stuff you've done already just so you can check it off.
You could do the clip notes.
You get to cross it off.
Right. Okay, so one we've already covered, which is the faulty mindset is my child is misbehaving on purpose. He should be able to accept limits and exhibit greater self-control. We've already gone through that, right? So One important point I want to make here, though, this is what a lot of parents say, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are wondering, that sometimes the behavior looks and is purposeful, right? They toss a toy across the room because you're mad at them because, they've said it's time for dinner and the toys have to go away. But no child sets out to purposefully be harmful or to misbehave. Sometimes they've learned behaviors that actually reach their goal, right? So they've learned that having a huge tantrum in the middle of Target may earn them the unicorn that dad had said they couldn't get, right? But remember, brings us to the next mindset. That's just being strategic, not manipulative. That's in the DNA of children. It's not misbehaving to want something. When they can't have it and they find a strategy that works, that just goes in the win column, right? So if you see your child as being manipulative or misbehaving on purpose, your haunches are going to be up. you're going to respond in a much more triggered, angry, frustrated, punitive way, which we know from tons of research and just from watching families engage in these encounters is way more detrimental to kids and parents than having a calm, loving, but clear approach, right? So those are two biggies.
Can I just ask what the difference between a kid being strategic and a kid being manipulative? Because it seems important to me, but I'm not sure I quite get it.
So what I'm saying is it's a mind shift that they're not being manipulative conveys that your child is, sociopathic and evil and doing something to force you to get you to read 10 more stories or have another hour of cuddle time. That's just strategic. That's a child using all the tools in their toolkit to try and get their way. That's the DNA of a child. So once you see that the desire and wanting it and using a tool that works, those are right? Isn't that what we're nurturing in kids, right? All of us, you're wanting them to be really strategic to figure out how they're going to do well on that test or how they're going to, do in a job interview later in life or get that promotion. It's our job as the parent to set the limit to show them which strategies will work and which won't, right? So if now I'm with my daughter and she's, oh, mommy, no, one more question. I haven't had enough time with you today. Well, the heartstrings are pulled. What kind of mother am I if I set this limit? Well, you're a great mom because if you let things fall off the rails, you're going to end up angry and shouting at her and upset and blaming her for not having your evening that you desperately need and deserve, right? Yep. So once you see it as strategic, you can do this. I know, Jess, it's never going to be enough questions. It's never going to be enough time. You always start, and I know lots of folks on your show have probably talked about the importance of validation, and there's a good reason for it. It's calming to the nervous system, and it helps kids learn to manage their emotions. So you lean into it. You don't try and convince them that their mind and body need rest. As if, like I said before, the child can say, oh, good point. Okay, please leave, right?
Great idea, Mom. I'm off to bed.
Exactly. So you say, it's never going to be enough. I totally get it. Our time is so precious, but that's mommy's rule because it's time for lights out so your mind and body can get the rest it needs and mommy can do her mommy jobs. I love you. I can't wait to see you in the morning. And which takes me to the next mind shift, which protest and tantrums are not inherently detrimental to kids. That's just part of the growing process, right? The frustration they feel when they can't have what they want when they want it, but it doesn't mean that just because they don't like a limit, that the limit isn't good for them. Any parent who has done a successful sleep plan will tell you how life-changing it is, right? And how much more loving they are as a parent. Because instead of dreading bedtime when the other shoe's going to drop and all of a sudden it's like 5 more minutes and 10 more songs and fix my blanket the perfect way, which is impossible. So an hour in, the blanket still isn't the way the child wants it to be. That's when parents behave in ways that they then feel very contrite and guilty about. So a lot of my work is helping parents avoid acting in a way that is uncomfortable for them.
And so that's where you actually need to lean into the limit setting.
So what happens in these situations is that exactly what the parent is trying to avoid, which is the meltdown, right, by setting a limit and putting a limit on books or on cuddle time, is exactly what happens when parents lose sight of the boundary and don't hold the limit, because now it becomes 10 books and, another hour of cuddle time and 20 minutes of figuring out the blankets to be in the perfect position for their child. And that's when things go off the rails, because now the parent moves into trigger mode. They start to feel angry and manipulated, right? Mm-hmm. And they start to behave in a way towards their child that ultimately they feel really badly about. There usually becomes a big protracted power struggle. The parent doesn't get the evening that they desperately need and deserve, and the child doesn't get the sleep they need. So once parents start to see that the limits are loving, that it's not like love or limits. These aren't like two bifurcated experiences they're having with their kids, which is often one of the mindsets, is that they think they're either loving their kid, connecting, talking, playing, or they're setting a limit and somehow being like, quote unquote, mean to their child. Once they shift that to see that their child isn't misbehaving on purpose, they're being strategic, and that limits are loving and not harmful to kids, they're already in a much better position to set those boundaries, keeps them in charge in a loving way.
I think that it's so interesting and it's complicated too. This is a mind shift that has been really difficult for me. And someone said a long time ago on the podcast, boundary seeking behavior, that like your kid is looking for a wall. They're looking for that tight hug of the rule. And it's difficult and challenging because you feel this thing of like, well, my kid needs to behave and I need to make that happen at any cost. This mind shift is, I think, so central to a more peaceful home.
Yeah, and actually, that is the perfect segue to the next mind shift, which is, so here's the mindset. I can control and change my child's feelings and behavior. I can make them behave. So here is the most humbling thing that nobody tells you when you get into parenting, which is that you have no control over your child. They are human beings. What comes out of their mouths, what they do with their bodies, the choices they make are completely up to them. The only thing you control is how you respond and how you scaffold the situation, right? So you can't force a child to sleep or pee or poop on the potty or not have a tantrum or get into their car seat. Those are only things they can choose to do. It's how you respond in those moments. So take the example I gave about the car seat, right? Once parents make this mind shift and they get out of trying to control their child, right, which we've already talked a lot about through the threats, through the bargaining, through the rewards, hoping against hope that the child's finally going to say, oh, yeah, you know, it would be a good idea for me to get to school on time, so I'm going to hop into the car seat. Or, oh, yeah, I should be doing more edifying things with my mind and my body than watching screens all day, so I'm going to voluntarily turn off the TV. You know, those are very unrealistic expectations. So once you get out of trying to convince your child to get with the program and leave the outcome in their hands, now you can focus on what you control. And that's where I came up with this whole idea of the two great choices, because it enables the parent to control the ultimate outcome of the situation without having to control their child. And so that is one of the most, I would say, foundational of the mindsets that are at play when parents come to me with a challenge, is that all of their energy is getting expended on getting their child to change their mind and make them do something.
One of your mindsets is that some parents feel like it's mean to have their child tantrum and not give them what they want, that the tantrums that ensue when my child doesn't get what she wants are bad for her. I haven't really ever thought of it that way, but do you have parents who feel like just your child being in that state is bad and therefore is to be avoided at all costs for the kid's sake?
Yeah, so this comes up a lot in my practice, and I will say largely with families who have kids who are big reactors, right? So by temperament, by nature, not something they chose or that their parents created, they feel and experience their experiences in the world very deeply, and therefore their reactions tend to be much bigger. I think of these kids as like not having a filter, so that sort of everything has a big impact on them. And so they are triggered into stress mode much more quickly and have bigger and more fierce meltdowns. And those meltdowns can be extremely distressing, you know, where like one dad called it like blood curdling screams. I just saw a video. So because of COVID now, a lot of families choose to just send me video as opposed to having a home visit. And I'm able then to see in all its glory how these encounters unfold. And in literally the video I was watching right before we connected today, there was a little girl a really, really feisty 3.5-year-old, super fierce, amazing kid. But their rule is that she can have milk with dinner, not before, because she tends to fill up on the milk and doesn't eat more quote unquote growing food. So this is, you can see, this is a very good parenting decision. That's a parent's job, is to, they do know better. And that's where the limits come in, right? So she is having none of it. And she is completely melting down, like throwing herself on the floor, screaming bloody murder. And to those parents, their knee-jerk reaction is like, this state of emotionality cannot be healthy for my child. So the tendency is then just to give in.
To accommodate. Yeah.
Right.
But once they see that, like, she's just fierce. In this moment, yes, she is distressed that she can't have what she wants. Her downstairs brain has completely taken over. But just because she doesn't like the limit doesn't mean it's not good for her. So once we go through these mind shifts, they're able to do something like the following. I know, Sadie, it's really disappointing to you because you want your milk now. Milk will be at dinner, and you give her space. And the storm always passes. And if you're not afraid of it, then you can give your child the space and not do what was happening in this video, which was constant trying to get her to calm down. That's what happens is parents are so triggered by the tantrum that they start to do too much talking and cheerlead or convince or try and make it all better, or alternatively get really frustrated. You have to stop tantruming. You have to stop screaming. Well, the child doesn't have to. Like, that goes into the category of things you don't control. You can't make your child stop screaming, but you can respond to her in a way that limits it, by not adding to her upset and her red zone behavior and only trigger her further. But that can only happen once they have made these very important mind shifts. She's not doing it on purpose. Her downstairs brain has taken over. The distress she's experiencing looks like it's detrimental to her, but over time, with your calm, loving presence and not getting angry and increasing her distress, she will ultimately learn to accept that she can't have what she wants when she wants it, which, by the way, are the roots of resilience and grit and all those wonderful things that we want kids to have.
Okay, I want to put a fine point on that answer. Let's take a break and we'll be right back with Claire Lerner.
All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that: taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence, all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE. My favorite skincare products actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com.
We're talking to Claire Lerner, the author of Why Is My Child in Charge? And before we were talking about this imaginary Sadie who's having massive meltdowns over her milk. And in presenting these mind shifts, I want to underline for people what you're saying is that this approach of holding these sort of firmer lines and being in charge is eventually going to lead to a shift in this behavior. It's not that then we're going to continue just having this tantrum. So what is it about this shift in behavior that turns off or turns down that downstairs brain in our kids?
Well, I think several things. One is that kids, they learn from experience. They're constantly putting two and two together. That's why, if a child says to a parent, I miss you, I haven't had enough time with you, and that earns them another hour of you in their bed or 5 more songs or stories, remember, these are really clever kids and they're putting two and two together, and that goes in the win column like we talked about before. So
right.
What's also true is that when the strategy no longer works, they adapt. That's just part of evolution, right? When you bump up, and you talked about this earlier, Margaret, that when you bump up against a boundary, that's where the growth and change happens, right? So, for example, another perennial problem, right, is like forcing or trying to get kids to sit at the table and eat breakfast, right? So, you can see what that path looks like. Tons of nagging, cajoling, threatening, you're going to be starving when you get to school if you don't eat, hoping against hope again, where they're in what I call the gray zone, right? They're in that mindset, I'm trying to control, I have to make my child eat, right? Once they make the mind shift to say, okay, here's the deal, Gerard, it's our job to give you these great growing foods and to let you know how much time there is for breakfast. You've got 2 great choices. You can have toast or you can have cereal. And now Gerard is screaming that he needs pancakes. And in this model, what his dads are saying is, totally get it. Pancakes are amazing, but pancakes aren't a choice this morning. Well, I'm going to starve. And now Gerard starts throwing out, I'm not going to eat. This actually clever kid said, I'm going to be mean to everybody at school. They know their parents' triggers, right?
They know what freaks you out.
Totally get you in the jugular. And with these mind shifts and not fearing the tantrum and seeing that giving into the tantrum only begets more of these troubling interactions, these dads were able to say, no problem, Gerard, it's your body and you'll make the best choice for Gerard. They don't take the bait. They don't start lecturing him about how to be nice to all his friends, because all that does is reinforce that strategy for Gerard. So in this case, when we worked it through and they stuck with it, I love this. And Gerard sees that they're not budging. He's like, fine, I'll have cereal. But, of course, he's not going to eat crow, no pun intended. So he has to show them that, he's angry about it. But again, seeing this for what it is, the dads were like, oh, here's your cereal, no problem. And they just moved on.
There's 2 things in your book, Claire, that I wanted to underline in this moment. When the kid is like, but I'm not going to, and you've made the 2 choices. There are 2 things that happened that for me were real mind shifts. And the first one is that you can ignore the provocations that the kid is going to do in response, but not the kid. So that Gerard's 2 dads in this situation, while Gerard is stomping around and I won't eat, I don't like toast. You can ignore that, but still say, hey, Gerard, do you think we should go to the zoo this weekend? You don't ice the kid out entirely.
So that was another one of these insights I had, again, while watching families in the comfort of their home, and how taking that bait was so detrimental to everybody involved. And that, what parents had learned to do was you're supposed to ignore that. But what I found was that kids just up the ante to show you how angry they are. So that wasn't working. That's the benefit of being in the trenches, is like when push comes to shove, and this is really why I wrote the book, is that a lot of times the theory sounds great in theory, but in practice, they backfire. And this was one of those, strategies that backfired. So when you ignore the bait, but stay connected, you get less of the amping up. And what you're doing is what every parenting book says, which is connection, right? That's what happens when parents come to me. They're like, we're trying to be connected, but my child is calling me names and hurling vitriol and making threats, and I have to teach him a lesson. And that's where this mind shift was so important, that the lesson you're teaching is not taking the bait, is not empowering insane statements like the kid who was going to throw his dad's voice box in the garbage, right? Or make threats like, I'm going to be mean to the babysitter if you go out tonight. It's, you know what, sweetie, I know you don't want us to go out tonight. Totally get it. And it makes perfect sense to us. And we're not trying to convince you to like it. And we can't wait to see you tomorrow. And we know you'll make great choices about how you want to be with Miss Mary. That is one of the best ways to prevent the acting out behavior.
And the other thing I just wanted to say, too, is that once the kid complies, you don't then give them a ticker tape parade for sitting nicely in their chair and picking cereal or toast, right?
This is a good one.
It's important to not give them tons of praise for having done their job as a child, which is to pick something for breakfast.
Well, and in addition, Amy, and this is one of these, insane, counterintuitive things for parents, is that these kids who draw you into power struggles, by and large, are highly, highly motivated to be in control, often to their own detriment. Like they will give up all sorts of bribes the parents are offering because then they think they're eating crow and they no longer wield the power, And so when they do sort of sidle up to the dinner table because you've stopped nagging and cajoling and you've just set a clear limit that this is dinner, this is when the food is out, this is where our great conversation is, and when the timer goes off, dinner's done, and if you choose not to come, no problem, you can have a big breakfast in the morning, right? That's like in a nutshell, one of the things I'm working on with parents is, what do you control in this situation? You can't make your child come to the dinner table, and you can't force him to eat, but you could set up a system that scaffolds it for him to make a better decision. So now you've got a kid who's been wielding all this power by refusing to come to the dinner table. And you stick to the limit and he starts to see that his strategy is no longer working. It's not getting him a lot of attention. It's not getting him any rewards. So he starts to come to the table and he picks up a spoon. And now the parent's like, oh, Jason, we're so happy you came to the table. Those kids go running to the hills, because they feel like they are caving. And I know this sounds insane. Like parents say to me, what, do I have a sociopath? Is that what he's really thinking? But those 3, 4, and 5-year-olds who are so motivated by power, if the optics are that they are giving in to what you wanted, the whole thing falls apart.
This book has really given me some insights, and my kids are not 3, 4, and 5. And I found it really useful. This book is called Why Is My Child in Charge? A Roadmap to End Power Struggles, Increase Cooperation, and Find Joy in Parenting Young Children. Claire, tell us where we can find you on the internet.
Well, probably the best way is through my website, which is just lernerchilddevelopment.com. That's a segue to pretty much everything. I'm on Instagram at Lerner Child Development. If you basically Google Lerner Child Development, you'll find many ways to connect with me and my content.
Excellent. And we will, of course, link to all of those things in the show notes of this episode. Claire, thanks so much for speaking with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was fun.